everyone. Welcome to Synergy Flavor Trendcast episode 13. I'm Alex Matsumoto. I'm a marketing associate at Synergy Flavors in the US. And on this episode, we're going to discuss how did salted caramel become such a popular flavor. And to help me break down that topic, I'm joined by Chris Whiting, who's our category manager for savory and nutrition in the UK. Hey, Chris, thanks for joining.
Hey, Alex. Thank you for having me. Salted caramel, it's everywhere at the moment, has been for a couple of years. Is it a new phenomenon?
Yeah, I think we can say that, Chris. And as you mentioned, at the same time, salted caramel has been around for a couple of years now. It only made to mainstream very recently. So I actually wanted to talk about that and going back to tell this very interesting story about salted caramel as a flavor and how it all started. According to many different articles about the topic, it all started in France with an innovative chocolatier in the 1960s. Henry Leroux attended a candy school in Switzerland, but then he returned to France to open his own store in Brittany, uh, a region that's known for its salted butter. But in an attempt to offer something different while using the region's key ingredient, he came up with a salted butter caramel using also crushed nuts. For this culinary creation, he was awarded Best Sweet in France in 1980. But salted caramel itself was just popularized by another French chef called Pierre Hermé in the 90s when he invented a salted caramel macaron. American chefs quickly adopted the concept and began combining sea salt with a variety of sweets, including caramel and chocolate. So, salted caramel flavor became a staple in the US, first debuting in fine dining and gourmet stores, and then eventually it started to appear in popular chain establishments, high end supermarkets, and finally, superstore shelves. It was just in 2008, though, that salted caramel flavor made to mainstream culture. And interesting enough, some articles have attributed the boost of salted caramel's popularity in North America to the former US President Barack Obama. In 2008, Obama was a presidential candidate, and during the campaign, he got to know Friends, a Seattle-based shop famous for different chocolates in Seattle. But he found out the smoked salt caramels, uh, and it was interesting that a lot of articles at the time wrote about this. Even the Guardian saying that after French chocolates in Seattle found out that their smoked salt caramels were the Obama's favorite chocolates, it's fair to say that they were probably jumping for joy. And within weeks, demand for the caramels was so high that the production of their other sweets had to be scaled back. New York Times also wrote that the president, kept a supply of the sweet treat during his 2008 presidential campaign. So that was definitely something that at the time a lot of different articles and uh, wrote about it and definitely made a point about salted caramel. And that's when a lot of those articles, and even if we take a look at the data that in which we'll a little bit later, kind of prove that point that after 2008 and somehow Obama is connected to that, salted caramel made to mainstream culture. It's safe to say that salted caramel also owes gratitude to dulce de leche, the caramel made from cooked milk and that's popular in South America and Mexico. According to the Nielsen Research Company, dulce de leche is what revitalized caramel flavor among consumers, giving kind of a precedence to salted caramel and helping to boost its popularity. With all that, with being coincidence or not, salted caramel hit mainstream in 2008, mostly with the launch of the Haagen-Dazs salted caramel flavor ice cream, and Starbucks also launched a salted caramel hot chocolate, both at the same time in 2008. And if we take a look at the graphics, so this is data from Intel on new product launches, including salted caramel flavor in the US. And as you can see, we had some launches in 2007 and 2008, but after 2009, that number grows exponentially. Until hitting 2016, that's the peak of the flavor. But interesting enough, in 2019, it kind of made a comeback in the curve, having a kind of a big increase in product launches using salted caramel as a flavor. And Chris, taking a look at that and all this, this interesting information that we were able to get, we also found out that there may be even a scientific reason to why salted caramel has become so popular. Is that true?
Yeah, or at least according to one 2017 study from the University of Florida, anyway. As you say, there might be a scientific reason why salted caramel has become so popular. So it's pretty widely acknowledged that certain foods, particularly sweet, salty, or fatty ones, can trigger sort of addictive responses in humans. And basically, because of its nature, salted caramel goes one further by ticking all three of those boxes. So normally when you're eating a sweet food or a fatty food, your body kind of regulates consumption, which is essentially known as hedonic adaptation. In other words, it's becoming full. But one study found that because of its complex blend of sweet and savoury, participants that were eating salted caramel actually underwent what they described as hedonic escalation, which is essentially rather than getting fuller, they actually find they kind of craved it more with each bite because they were detecting different flavors, and that level of complexity was continuing to make it interesting while they were eating the product.
Chris, I'm a huge fan of science, and that makes a lot of sense to me. So, very interesting. But what we know for a fact is that salted caramel was the fastest growing flavor in indulgent categories in the last 3 years. Well, caramel flavor has always been one of the traditional favorites in indulgent categories, like sweet biscuits, chocolate, confectionery, and interesting enough, caramel ranks third actually. Only behind unflavored and chocolate, with around 8% of launches in those combined categories that I just mentioned from September 2016 to September of 2019. And within the same period, salted caramel, though, was the fastest growing flavor. So we understand that presents an opportunity to experiment with new iterations of caramel in the marketplace. So, Chris, we can definitely see by the data, provided that salted caramel flavor has achieved a mainstream status in the US. But I wanted to get your perspective. How is the popularity of the flavor in Europe, um, but also across the globe?
We definitely see a similar pattern emerge globally, maybe lagging a year or two behind what we saw in the US, but certainly around the beginning of the last decade, so roughly 2012, we see a massive increase in the number of launches of salted caramel flavored products. And we see that growth going right the way through really, really until 2019 and into this year as well. Growth just isn't slowing down. It's becoming more popular than ever, really. And I think when you look at the kind of regions where salted caramel is prevalent as a flavor, we see the US at the top, which is unsurprising given how instrumental they've been in, or the region's been in actually promoting this flavor. But France, just behind, which again, I suppose going back to what you said about it being quite a classic French fine dining flavor profile, that's probably not a massive surprise either. And then just behind that, you have the UK, you have Australia, actually starting to see quite a bit of activity in Asia, but also the APAC region as a whole. So Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and beginning to appear, although not in the top 10 in markets like China, South Korea as well. So there's a lot of interest globally. It's not just a European centric or an American centric flavor profile. It really does have kind of global appeal. We see probably fairly expected things happening in the terms of categories as well. Desserts and ice creams top the list for launches, chocolate, confectionery, bakery, really anywhere that that consumers expect an indulgent flavor profile. I think you can logically find salted caramel. So yeah, dairy as well, sweet spreads, and then actually coming through into the drinks market as well. Fairly popular in hot beverages. So think salted caramel, hot chocolates, alcoholic beverages, particularly the kind of liqueur type profiles, and RTDs as well, particularly the the coffee RTD, so salted caramel coffee type flavors. So yeah, really, you know, a lot of activity going on around salted caramel. It's obviously it's huge now, but I suppose the big question is, you know, what's next? What can we learn from the sweet salty success of salted caramel? You know, do we expect to see more sweet and salty combination flavors? Do we expect to see different types of caramel? You know, are we looking at looking to different regions for inspiration, like dulce de leche or say miso caramel? You know, we're seeing a bit more of. So I don't know what your thoughts on that are, Alex, where you see this you see this going as a flavor.
Yeah, we can definitely expect that, Chris, as you said, you know, those sweet and salty flavor combinations, but also new salted flavors and new twists on caramel itself. So we have captured some interesting product launches that, you know, are using those different flavor combinations. Like in New Zealand, we have captured salted maple flavor, a salted lemon in Japan, also different twists in caramel, so coffee caramel. In Japan, you know, Kit Kat launched this miso caramel. In the US, we have, you know, plenty of different options of brands using burnt caramel as the flavor. As you said, you know, classic flavors are adding salty to their description. So those, you know, three great examples of classic flavors like chocolate, vanilla, and peanut butter, but using salt into their description. So we have a salted chocolate protein bar launched here in the US. In Japan, a salted vanilla, and also here in the US using the, you know, the great and mainstream peanut butter flavor, but this time using a salted peanut butter in an ice cream. Another interesting, you know, point to take a look at it is that, you know, salted caramel has reached such a mainstream status that some manufacturers are incorporating caramel chips into their products as a textural element, just like the chocolate chips that are all over the place. So this is definitely something that we can expect for caramel and for salted caramels, kind of migrating from just a flavor to play like a role in as a textural element in your product launches as well. That's pretty much what we wanted to discuss in this episode. I think this is such a great example of how mainstream culture can influence flavor growth and flavor trends across the globe. So, you know, here at Synergy, we love to take a look at that. We are proactively working towards that to understand what's next in the marketplace, using also mainstream culture to understand how that will influence you know, next trends in the market. So if you have any questions about salted caramel, what's next for you know, flavor combinations and flavor trends, please get in touch with us and we will love to discuss that with you. Chris, once again, thanks for joining, and thank you for listening to Synergy Flavor Trendcast. See you next time.